looking vehicles here.
Hey Sean, how are you?
I'm still breathing. Is there a garbage can I can use?
That's Tara.
Hi, Sean.
Oh, Tara, we've met before, actually.
You're right. You have a good memory.
Well, ma'am, it's all related to this situation, so I probably should have a good memory.
John, you want some water or anything?
I'm not sure. I brought myself something to drink. I got a job.
Okay. Well, you got something to drink, you said?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to lock the door, but I'll close it. If you need anything, just holler. Okay.
How are you?
Exhausted.
Been better, it sounds like.
Sorry about that.
You're all right.
The last time we talked was over at Pumpkin Pantry.
You're right. You're right.
I'm going to get any notes that you have on that situation. The whole thing with the telephone, the officers were saying, I'm hoping they had their body cameras on at the time, because I can verify that most of the things that they had said are incorrect. Also, I don't think that it was proper during any of that situation. After I tried to get Officer Hahn to do his job, I don't feel it's been appropriate for he or Cody Selhorst to be involved in anything after that. I'm pretty calm right now. I mean, not internally, but you haven't personally done me wrong. A lot of the situation is that people don't understand autism.
Okay.
And they also don't understand Tourette syndrome. And with a lot of the drugs and druggies and situations like that exist in America, I'm sure you're well aware. In the line of work that you work in, it's just a lot of drugs, a lot of abuse, and it's difficult because there's supposed to be services as a child to help you out, and some of them do, and some of them put you in places where you're not safe. You're in a place where you're supposed to be safe, where the government says, hey, this is where you put them in this situation. And then there's also protocols that people are able to use and abuse in order to I'm trying to figure out how to say this in the best way.
You say it. You're not going to offend me, Sean.
I've had a lot of situations where I really needed the police to listen to me. I've been bullied to the point where I am always suicidal, but I'm not trying to kill myself. I am trying to get someone to look at the situation, because all of this situation from the very beginning, since before Natalie Bollinger was killed, it's all over people not understanding autism and targeting people with autism because they think they might do something. Especially like when they watch movies, and in those movies the bad guys aren't good looking and they got weird twitches and stuff like that. But I've had a lot of people inflict bodily injury on me. There's also a lot of officers who decided to do very vigilante things, and I needed someone there ever since the beginning to protect me from that. I can't handle my finances. I remember to shower and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, the cost of being falsely accused, and then the fact that the protocols for someone they call mentally ill are different and basically takes away all of my civil and human rights has basically made me a permanent victim because of the situations I'd like to show you. I mean, whenever I tell people, they always treat me like I'm crazy, but it's literally been on the news, many of the places that I've been. There was an officer named Waylon Lolatai after Natalie died, and I'd been trying to get help from my friends and also from the police and also from you guys. I mean, I basically called everybody that I could trying to get help with this situation, and I did all the things that everybody told me that I needed to do to be able to be protected, and I really wanted to tell people more of the story that was going on because it was an ongoing thing. It was a lot of gang stalking over a messed up situation where people took a meltdown in the wrong way, and I tried to do the right thing every step of the way, but people were hurting me.
Okay.
When she died, I realized that I got to do something to get the protocol changed because the term mentally ill is too loose of a term, and it gives people the way wrong, ideas about it, and that is not okay when it comes to law enforcement, because there are a lot of autistic people who are sitting in jail just because they had a meltdown over the abuse.
Can I ask you something?
You can.
So are you diagnosed with autism?
I am.
Okay. I don't recall that from last time. Is that a new diagnosis?
Oh, ma'am, I told you that last time. That's why I'm hoping that their body cameras were on.
Okay.
That's the thing, is that between your memory and
Which
the
is not very
recordings,
good.
right? And between my memory and the recordings are more important. And the fact that Officer Hahn was there, between him and Cody Selhorst and the things that they had done before we met, I was already afraid of them. Cody Selhorst had already tried to intimidate me into leaving town. When I tried to turn it in, I needed someone to be here and present with me. But because of small town politics and because of what happened to Natalie was all over the news and how many people had been targeted because of it already for trying to help me out. And I've got documentation of it there in paper. The problem is the term mentally ill is way too loose of a term, and the fact that my predators, some of them being officers who decided to do very vigilante things, I've been scared to go to them my entire adult life. I already know what happens when you are diagnosed as autistic, and I was told in this case that, Sean, you should have gotten that a lot younger, and you really should have pursued that. And I tried to explain to the lady what homelessness does and how difficult it is to jump through those hoops, especially when you're making hundreds of calls and nothing is happening, and you are literally overwhelmed and shutting down as a result of it, and you know that you're going to have a meltdown, and you're trying to tell everybody in your life, hey, this is what it's like. I know what your assumptions are, but this is really what it's like, and I need you to take a look. I mean, I'm trying. But you know as well as I do, and most of these people who are parents of autistic children and also adults, that when you try to get those services, it's not so easy. Doug Costa can vouch for the fact that it's
not easy.
It's not easy.
It's very hard.
And when you're an adult by yourself, it's non-existent. There's a lot of programs that were supposed to be able to help me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was supposed to have disability when I turned 18, but the thing is that my dad had an idea of the way it worked. He thought that I should be able to just walk into the office and get it, and that's the way that it was. It wasn't that way.
Nope.
You have to have someone go in with you, always. If you have a meltdown because you're scared, you're going to be treated differently than you should be if you have somebody who's not there. I've got it documented, a lot of different interactions with the police. Some of them where there was somebody else there to speak up. Some of them where that other person who spoke up for me said the wrong thing but didn't understand. Like with my interaction with Jordan Anderson when he spoke with him at the beginning, the misunderstanding was that when he asked Graham, I know his name too, he wrote a letter as well about the situation, but him and Laura Nelson were involved in that. It was my grandma's funeral, and there was a situation involving Natalie's sister and her dad. And for 7 hours, her dad gave no indication that she was alive. And I mean, I called 911. I needed something to happen. I needed it to be documented, just like I needed it documented the whole year before Natalie was killed. Before she was killed, I didn't know how to use my technology. I know a lot of people think that
What year was she killed?
She was killed in 2017, in December. A lot of what's been used to harm me is protocol of when we're alone. I can show you the protocol of when it's just me. I can show you the protocol, actually between me and the officers. I can show you the protocol when it's me having a panic attack and somebody else is there to speak up. I can show you what it's like when I am scared and what it's like when somebody else assumes the wrong thing or is on substances and I'm the one who has to take the punishment for it because of assumptions of autism. And that's, do you understand how scary that is? Mm-hmm. Also needing a safe place and a safe environment, just like the last time I talked to you. The longer it takes to get that safe environment, the more scared I am. And in most of the places that I've been, I have not only documented the abuse in those places, I've actually recorded it so that I can show that that's what it was like.
So Sean, let me ask you this. What does a safe environment look like to you?
Well, ma'am, my special interests are important if I don't have any friends there. So I have to have a companion animal, a real dog preferably. But the most important part is that it's a roof over my head, and I need help in person because at this point there is so much that I need to express and show. I can't manage the finances by myself. I can't manage my money by myself. I can't manage my property by myself. I can't get my groceries myself. My back is really screwed up, and the more I have to use it, the more screwed up it gets. I've also got injuries that have occurred from abuse that I've had to endure since Natalie died that make it quite difficult to take care of myself. I'm not completely, entirely incapable physically of doing these things, but I can't do it for long. I can't do anything heavy, and all of my experience prior to hurting my back was mostly manual labor.
Okay.
I am highly intelligent, and I also studied a lot of the effects on the brain growing up with people who were locked up. As I was growing up, I definitely read a lot of books, and even as an adult, those are the people I've been trying to help the most. Alright, I had to stop it there. A subservient environment, like Andy's, for example. I'm subservient there. It's not my place. At Dallas's in chapel, I'm subservient. It's not my place. When he wants to have his kids over, it doesn't matter what I had planned or what I was working on, even if we had agreed upon it ahead of time. I gotta mind my P's and Q's and watch what I'm saying, watch what I'm talking about. Just like having to do it at Starbucks. That's the problem, is that these people committed crime after crime after crime, forcing me into homelessness, eating up all of my money, and eating up a lot of taxpayer dollars. Meanwhile, I have to mind my P's and Q's with what I say to Tara Miller, because I am in the Dual County Courthouse. The Dual County Sheriff's Department is in the Dual County Courthouse. I had to go through a lot of different recordings to find this. I've got to go through a lot more recordings to find the rest of it. Now, we're only 14 minutes in. You guys have already gotten to hear her admit that we spoke in 2018. I'm pretty sure by this point she's already said some bullshit about autism. She fucking knew it on the 18th. Or on the, God, what day was that? I'll have to go through my Facebook to find out when it was that I spoke with her. I wrote it down as Tara Miller, but her name's actually Tara Smith. She's with Adult Protective Services, and the only safe place that I could meet with her was at the courthouse. I couldn't have her over at Dallas's. Sheriff Scott DaCosta is awful nice in this video, isn't he? He's awful pleasant, isn't he? By this point, I'd been trying to get the Nebraska State Patrol to do their fucking job for well over a year. I had to do things that I shouldn't have had to do because cops wouldn't do their fucking jobs. Also, Tara Smith did not do her job. Jen Beebe did not do her job. Penny Cooper did not do her job. Kara Heller did not do her job. Scott DaCosta did not do his job. Cody Selhorst did not do his job. Jordan Anderson did not do his job. Alright, we'll continue. But 5 years ago, you wouldn't have been able to tell the difference between me and somebody who's autistic, or me and somebody who's neurotypical, which is somebody who's not autistic. I do practice looking people in the eyes. I look them in the corner of their eyebrows when I can. But a lot of the things that I had to say, because there were police involved and I was having a panic attack, when I was taken to the hospitals, they listened to what the police had to say instead of what I had to say. And the things that I was telling those officers and the things that I was telling the people in the hospital that they pegged me as crazy for are true events that happened, and I do have evidence and proof of it, and I need people to look at that, because I've had to do a lot of very desperate things, because I've been in a very desperate situation over people's misunderstandings. Also, some of the channels that people have looked at me from, because a lot of this was on the news. There's a guy named Rob Gavigan, if you could write his name down.
Rob. How do you spell his last name? G-A-V-A-G-A-N. He's a web sleuth site. He's got like 3.2 million viewers or something on his YouTube channel. He's a YouTube person. Okay. So he's not a cop or an attorney or anything like that?
No, ma'am. I haven't been able to get a cop to look at the evidence or an attorney too, and it's my disabilities, mostly PTSD, not my Tourette syndrome. That just makes it worse, and also it isn't my autism. For the most part, it's people's misunderstanding and me having severe PTSD from the abuse. Now, Rob Gavigan, his thing on YouTube is on Natalie Bollinger, if you could write that down. And if you figure there's about 320 million people, there's probably closer to 350 million in the United States. He's got 3.2 million subscribers, so that's I'm around 1 in 100 people who recognize my face, know who I am, and only know one side of the story because people keep getting the wrong idea. I can prove that most of my friends were threatened, harassed, and intimidated into doing some pretty desperate things themselves.
Okay.
But I keep getting treated like I'm schizophrenic for this, and the fact that the officers involved, many of them have been involved previously, and the fact that I've been prevented from having a day in court or showing evidence or speaking up for myself in court because of the mentally ill tag and how the laws and rules are different. I needed somebody there with me the whole time.
So, okay, so when you're talking about court, I don't understand what you mean. You want to go to court?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The abuse is not going to stop until I can show that in each and every one of the court dates that has been a result of Natalie's death, that it was over people's misunderstandings, over the abuse from those misunderstandings, and the desperation that I had to go through to try to get someone to listen. Because no doctor can make the decisions based on the information that they have, because they're not investigators. Investigators need to look at that. And instead of treating me like I'm crazy for saying it, I'm telling you I've got proof and people need to look at it. I've gone through a lot of abuse over people's bad assumptions. Sheriff DaCosta has agreed that his department here needs training in how to deal with people who are autistic, and we need to get that to happen quickly. Now, as far as your first question, I'm sorry for rambling for so long. A safe environment for me right now is a roof over my head where it's not a whole bunch of people there.
Okay.
And access to someone nearby so that I don't feel unsafe. There's a lot going on, and a lot of people have gotten bad ideas that usually it's through texting. I hate texting because then people get the wrong idea and block you.
Absolutely.
Or they get the wrong idea, and then when they finally do call, they're busy with these assumptions that they had for the last 200 text messages, and you're trying to iron that out, and you're trying to go, hey, you need to stop, you need to stop. And
I would agree with you.
I've lost most of my friends that way. So, and then there's the fact that I'm not good technologically, so being able to even turn in the reports that people are asking me to in the way that they're asking, I've made multiple attempts. I can prove that. I screw it up because I'm technologically inept. I can prove that. When I was unsuccessful at going to the police, I went to YouTube and Facebook.
The reason I'm going to pause there is because it's not just my technological ineptitude. There are a few other people who have looked at the websites for turning these people in, including turning in the police, including turning in stuff to the FBI. Most of those sites don't work. They don't work. Then there's the fact that, well, they just plain and simple don't investigate anything. They don't bother to try to collect any of the evidence. And there's no place to put the evidence. All of these places are going to blow me off over the mentally ill tag. Meanwhile, I'm supposed to have someone in my corner. There's supposed to be people assigned to help me with this. People like Jen Beebe, people like Kara Heller, people like Tamara, people like Penny Cooper, people like Tara Smith. None of these people took it seriously. Sure, she showed up, but did she look at any of the evidence? No, I was trying my best to answer her questions, but I was trying to turn in the sheriff and his deputies. Let's continue.
To show the evidence, and I was I was Facebook banned for a lot of stuff that, like, I posted up some pictures of, or screenshots of some threats against my life, and I got Facebook banned for 30 days for that. But because of the, Rob Gavigan isn't the only channel. There's also Sword and Scale and many other ones, and then the Denver local news. We get it here, we get it in Sydney, it goes to North Platte, you know, everybody in this area gets Denver news.
Right.
And so a lot of these people who recognize me from Chapel, like they think I'm some sort of a monster. They treat me like a monster.
You know what, Sean? I don't know if that's necessarily associated with Natalie or, like you had said, the mental illness.
The mental illness. No, it's all over Natalie. See, now she's deferring and deflecting. The mental illness.
But it needs to not be called mental illness. It needs to be called what it is. I mean,
The autism, Asperger's, that
and they tried to have me diagnosed.
Now, obviously, her tone there, the Asperger's autism,
as schizophrenic. I've got a lot of people who are willing to write down and on paper and testify in court that I am not schizophrenic and never have been.
Okay. Doctors that will say that?
Ma'am, the doctors that I've had to deal with are mostly nursing staff who are not well equipped to handle the situation. The nursing staff that I've had to deal with are mostly...
And that's one of the biggest issues, is doctors saying, oh, well, you know, you're not schizophrenic. And I say, well, write it down. Well, that's a non-diagnosis. If you're not diagnosed, we don't write it down. Oh my God. See, that is the biggest issue there, is that I needed someone, well, Marcia Estrada did. She types, to whom it may concern. I have been seeing Sean Schwartz on a weekly basis for outpatient therapy since completing a pre-treatment assessment on October 18th, 2021. That's right, happy birthday to me. During this evaluation, Sean described symptoms he experienced on a regular basis. From the information he provided, I have diagnosed him with post-traumatic stress disorder. This comes from years of trauma and inconsistencies in a person's life, often starting as a young child. I also believe Sean to be on the autism spectrum, which causes difficulties in adapting to social settings. The most common symptoms of this disorder are anxiety, hypervigilance, and a feeling of impending doom. Well, it's difficult not to have a feeling of impending doom when you have been threatened, harassed, and assaulted fucking repeatedly. It also says it does not appear Sean experiences any hallucinations or other psychosis. He does not meet the diagnostic criteria for schizophrenia. Sincerely, Marcia L. Estrada. I was prevented from seeing any actual doctors. All of my money was going to travel from place to place to place to place to place. I lost my only place when Natalie was killed. I had to make a choice between staying at Ken and Leah's or keeping my place in Chapel because I was paying rent at both places. Brandon Ratner helped me move all of my stuff from Chapel, Nebraska to Ken and Leah's, and then as soon as Ken and Leah knew that I didn't have another place to stay, they proceeded to rip me off for everything I fucking had. But we'll listen to this crazy lady some more.
Drug counselor type people, and they aren't equipped to look at the evidence either. They treat me like I'm schizophrenic right from the start because the officers and the situation, I mean, that's the thing, is that
when you are tagged as mentally ill and somebody does something wrong, they can use that mentally ill tag to get away with it and prevent you from showing the truth. And after that, it all falls down like dominoes after that, unless someone steps in and says stop, because nobody is going to listen. When I was younger, there was no such thing as any of that crap. Now, there was a few situations where I was younger where there was a guy who was touching kids inappropriately, and I told on him, and they tried to have me diagnosed as schizophrenic. It didn't work. And also that guy, as I recently found out, 2 years after that, he got in trouble for doing what he did anyway, so.
How old are you?
I will turn 40 on the 18th of this month.
Okay.
Now that's the thing about someone trying to have you diagnosed as schizophrenic because you told on them. It ain't the first time I've been through that fucking rodeo. Now why is it that they didn't diagnose me as schizophrenic when I was a child? Well, that would probably have something to do with the fact that I was highly intelligent and was aware of my surroundings. When they asked me a question, I was able to answer it. There's also the fact that the girl that staff member was molesting, well, she was trying to speak up too. It's a fucked up situation. These people help each other to get away with these things. And yeah, that was back in the 1980s. God bless America, right? Ronald Reagan and all that bullshit. Go fuck yourselves.
So, go ahead.
The point is that doctors who are not used to dealing with somebody who's autistic under such an extreme situation, listening to the cops and not listening to me, there are medications that I grew up on that you don't put in my body.
Alright, I should probably stop there because it was nurses and security guards believing that because the cop told them something that it must be true. This is not fucking okay. Now, I wouldn't have had to do any of that crazy things that I did if people like, well, Kayla Trujillo had kept her goddamn word. See, from when Natalie died to when I ultimately had to actually break the law, Miss Peaches had been pissy farting around for months, not doing a goddamn thing that was actually helpful. Hey, Miss Peaches, thanks for sending me this. Thanks for telling me this. But you need to tell the cops. You need to write a fucking police report. Did I or did I not come to you, Miss Peaches, for help before Natalie was killed? Just like Veronica Bruce. Did I or did I not go to her for help?
And 12 times in the last few years, I have had those injected into my body for going in under extreme duress, because making hundreds upon hundreds of phone calls, it's just one call after another, and they all refer you to someone else, and they're all government funded. They all get money from the government for doing a specific job, and in my situation, that is to refer it on to someone else, Everybody who asks me at this point, you know, have you bothered to call this place or that place? I've got evidence and records of hundreds.
You get to hear that from Marcia Estrada. You get to hear that from everyone. Missy, Lisa, all of them. Yes, I fucking called those places. I had to do so alone because people like Penny Cooper want to keep on deferring and changing the subject. Tara Smith here, she kept on deferring as well. Obviously, I needed her there so that I could turn in the Dole County Sheriff, and instead I'm doing my best to answer questions that are all deferences.
The phone calls, each and every one of them. My advocate, her name is Meg, and I can give you her information too. She is dealing with a lot on her own, and the panic attacks and meltdowns that I'm having over this are,
So where?
they're crippling.
Okay, I believe that. I totally believe that. Because they are crippling. It makes you not want to function day to day.
It makes me not able to function day to day, but I still have to. There's also medical limitations because of my back. I'm not supposed to twist.
Not want to function. Not want to function. No, incapable. Incapable. Right now, I can't work on that shit. I don't know fucking the first thing about the goddamn computer bullshit I gotta do. I need someone to actually help me with that. Mandy Singer was gonna help me with it, and obviously she can't. She's got family stuff going on. We'll press play.
I'm not supposed to lift anything more than 10 pounds, but I personally have to do those things anyway. I can't get by without, especially being homeless. And I ended up homeless over a meltdown, over abuse, and the fact that when I have gone to the police repeatedly over this, I get the mentally ill treatment because I have to talk to them alone.
What do you mean you're homeless because of a meltdown?
There was some windows up at low income, and there's been some ongoing abuse that I had previously tried to take to the police here.
Chris Kurth is one of them, and another one is Robert Warnick. See, by this time it's already been a couple of years into it. Also, I found out later that one of the guys that was with Chris Kurth that was threatening to kill me was Leslie Snell's brother-in-law, Carl Snell. I have his phone number. I also have Clint Snell's number. It's horse shit.
Here, or to the sheriff's department here, and because of what happened with Natalie, and they haven't looked at my evidence. They've only seen what's on the news and stuff like that. Like, they had a very specific demeanor towards me, and although sometimes it was nice, it was also very dismissive regardless. Nobody ever looked at the evidence, and there's a lot of it.
Are you talking about Natalie or the broken windows at the low income?
I'm saying all of this comes from the same situation. The reputation that I ended up with because of the media and because of police assumptions and because the violence and the threats and harassment towards me have gone completely unchecked. I have had to go to very drastic measures to try to get the abuse to stop. I need someone to look at it. As far as my autism advocate, her issue is that she's so far away. Before Natalie died, I moved to Colorado because that's what the people that I was dealing with, like Nicole Peralta and Tamara and all them, and also Brenda Dickinson, they told me, hey, there's services in Colorado, so you need to work on transferring everything to Colorado. But the problem is the only safe place I had in Colorado, or reasonably safe place, was Ken and Leah's. They had recently lost a daughter. Leah was quite hysterical, but they're drug dealers, and Ken does have a full-time job, but that was the safest place that I had. Before Natalie died, they stole my money. I was broke. I was trying to get an attorney so I could go take Ken and Leah to court. I am disabled. My disabilities are documented, but the thing is I couldn't get anyone to listen because of my disabilities now. They're like, well, you need someone to come in with you. You have to have someone come in with you. If they're calling you mentally ill, then you have to come in with someone else who will verify that you're telling the truth. You need a friend or a family member, and I have at least 50 different officers or 50 different situations with officers where they have also, you know, asked me, hey, do you have a guardian or a power of attorney? And no, I don't. Prior to Natalie's death, I could have handled most of it, but after Natalie's death, because of the lack of resources, because I was made homeless by Natalie's death, ever since then I've had to take abuse over what was on the news, over the fact that it was unchecked, over the fact that I've literally had to break the law to try to force the police to take a look. There's a lot of documentation I have from other people and their phone numbers, and you can call them and verify that these situations did actually happen, and that I was legitimately afraid, that there was legitimate reason for me to be afraid. So with me being afraid to talk to the police at this point, because a lot of their misunderstandings lead to me getting injected with drugs in mental hospitals, I have needed, since before Natalie died, an advocate to help me through all this. If we'd had a mediator of some sort in January of 2017 to stop this, all of this would have ended in 2017. But also there's the fact that because of the mentally ill tag, all people have to do is gang up on me. It's their word against mine. People are gonna protect family, they're gonna protect their fellow co-workers, and if you work for the government, you kind of gotta be paranoid for your job too.
So I kind of want to go back a little bit to,
Yes, ma'am.
because you said you're homeless.
Yes, ma'am.
How long have you been homeless?
I've been homeless, I want to say, about 2 weeks.
So, this is right after I had to make a choice between going to my court dates or keeping my place. Jen Beebe wasn't helping. She wasn't doing her job. I didn't have the funds. I let her know that I didn't have the funds, and Jen said, well, you gotta pick one or the other. It's taking advantage of broke people. That's what it is. Taking advantage of the disabled.
I'm sorry.
Sorry about
Oh,
that.
I hit my
Well,
head on the table. God, that almost hit you.
well, you missed me, so it's all right.
I'm sorry.
Spend all her time answering her questions.
So you had said that you had a meltdown, and that was here in Chapel, and then you were living with somebody and they kicked you out. Is that right?
No, I was living in low income here in Chapel.
Oh, okay.
But
okay.
I haven't had someone literally here in person to help me with stopping the abuse here in Chapel. I've moved over 40 times since Natalie was killed, so.
Okay.
Alright, so I am going to state that by this point, there's a woman whose name is Jen Beebe. And she was court-ordered. That's right, court-ordered to help me. And for 6 months, she did nothing. For 6 months, she ignored every single phone call. Court-ordered to do so. Not court-ordered to ignore my phone calls, but court-ordered to basically be my representative. And she didn't do a goddamn thing. Let's continue.
Like, it's not easy, and I've had to stay with alcoholics and drug dealers and people like that who, yeah, they're not going to go to the cops with me.
Right, right. So you were living in low income and they kicked you out due to the broken windows?
Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
so where have you been staying for the last 2 weeks?
I've got a horse trailer, and I've got a sleeping bag that's really good too, so it helps, and some blankets.
You own a horse trailer?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I don't have anywhere that's my own property to park it on, and I've been trying to work with my advocate to get disability money to get property of my own, but it's difficult to do that, and
Now, why was my disability money taken away? Because I was incarcerated for far longer than I should have been. No decent human being would have done the things that these officers did or that these volunteers did. Meanwhile, I had to work with nutjob web sleuths like Layla Johnson or Missy Johnson. Who knows what name she goes by now? I needed a real person to be helping me. I also admitted all the shit that I did. All of the things that I did out of desperation. Because all of these fucking morons couldn't get it through their head. I've been called mentally ill. You have to come forward for me. Because I've been trying and I'm getting nowhere.
with everything that's going on, and with all of the phone calls that I need to make about each one of these individual issues, and the fact that they haven't gone through, I'm overwhelmed. It's too much for any one person to do, especially when I should have had an advocate and an aide with this.
Now this was almost 2 years ago. Almost 2 years ago. What the fuck? And of course she never got back to me and never bothered looking at any goddamn evidence.
When I was 18, when I get overwhelmed, I shut down, and the more I have to deal with, the more likely I am to shut down. And then when I'm rambling, because I'm seriously that overwhelmed, it all sounds crazy anyway, because I'm talking too fast, because I'm trying not to have a meltdown. At that point, I'm already in a full-blown panic attack. Right now, I'm not having a meltdown, but I am having a severe panic attack, which is something that I have to calm myself and manage in order to not stumble on my words or stutter, or sometimes I'll be thinking about two situations that are very related, and because I'm thinking of both of them, I kind of get both of those stories intermingled, which is a very difficult thing to explain to people. That I'm not trying to give you the wrong impression, but these are both related situations, and I'm also thinking about them simultaneously. And for somebody who is autistic, sometimes they think about multiple things at once, and when you are overwhelmed, it becomes more difficult to express it, and the more overwhelmed you are, the more difficult it is to express it. I think I just said basically the same thing twice in a very similar way.
Okay.
And a lot of other people, they say, hey Sean, you're doing this, but then the flip side of this is that they're not autistic and they're doing the same thing, which means that it's more of a human reaction. Also, with a lot of the things that were done to me, they happened a lot, and I repeatedly tried to get people that I know to understand, hey, they're calling me mentally ill, so the cops aren't doing anything. And they're like, no, dude, like, you're probably the smartest guy I know, and you're not schizophrenic, dude. You're just playing head games, because there's no way they're going to think that. And I'm like, no, dude, seriously, they are. That's why I need you to go in with me, because this is how they're going to treat me. I've seen them do it to homeless people for a lot of years. I've seen them do it to people who actually are schizophrenic. I've seen them do it to people who aren't schizophrenic. I've seen them do it to people who are trying to recover from drugs. I've seen them do it to girls who are trying to tell on their dad for raping them. So, I mean, there's a whole wide range of, if you're called mentally ill, you're screwed, and your predator can use that to get away with it. A lot of the people that I say are my predators, not all of them, some of them are straight up predators. But with a lot of them, it's just that they were manipulated by other people. And also, with a
ultimately resulted in the situation with you, because I needed Chris Kurth to stop doing what he was doing, and I needed the officers to take that report. And the situation with Natalie was the whole reason that all of that was happening. At this point, like, Chris Kurth is still being an issue. He's threatened me on 3 different occasions, all 3 with other people. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
He has also crossed into Cheyenne County to a farm that I was at to create trouble out there and threaten, harass, and intimidate me. And the lady who was trying to help me out up until he showed up, that was like paradise. She's got horses, and she's got cows, and her horses love me. Most animals do. But when he came out there with her farmhand and was threatening my life, luckily Floyd Stegeman called his son, and he came and picked me up and drove me into chapel so that Sandy didn't have to deal with that. But also, Floyd isn't somebody who wants to talk to the police, and his son isn't somebody who wants to talk to the police, and his son wasn't there for most of it.
So, is there any, so here we back up a minute. So do you get Social Security disability?
I do, but I need help managing the money, which means, and my communication abilities over the phone and in texting are the worst way to do it. I would really like somebody who, all right, I have 2 people that I text in my phone, and when I text them, instead of us texting back and forth for hours, they'll tell me to come over at a specific time. I come over at that specific time that's structured. I don't have anxiety about it. I simply get there and then we have a conversation. Whereas a lot of people are very nonchalant, or, you know, I will, but for me, not knowing when, you know, a lot of times I'll wait on people who are like, I'll be ready in a couple hours, but I'll call you. And then 2 or 3 days later, I'm like, hey, it's been longer than a couple hours, and then I get the FU, this, that, and the other,
Gotcha.
And I treat people that way back now, which I would never have done before, but this is critical.
So have you ever had a payee for your disability?
No, I turned 18 and I was homeless immediately. I had 1 sock, or 1 shoe, a pair of socks, a pair of pants, and a shirt. And I was dropped off in Chapel, Nebraska with no services. And I was told that there were services, but like I said, when you go in by yourself and you're intelligent, that's where a lot of people were not understanding where this situation went as south as it did. I'm like, yes, you guys know me in real life. You've known me for a lot of years. I'm having to deal with people during a critical crisis situation who don't. And you guys really need to come forward. If you say that you're going to go in with me, then you really do, because sometimes, especially with the slander against me and with the fact that a lot of my predators have been allowed to show evidence, but I'm not allowed to because they call me mentally ill. But then I still have the evidence that, you know, I've been trying to present from the beginning, and I've literally had to break the law to try to get that looked at because I am being abused over that situation still. I've never had anybody, I've had a few people who are willing to, but they're in places where I am unsafe or I have warrants, and I was abused in the jails. There's a guy named George on my YouTube channel and a few other witnesses to the abuse by the jailers over the slander. And that's not okay either, because when I'm trying to tell the hospital staff, hey, you know, I've been assaulted repeatedly by police and I have proof, and they're treating me like I'm schizophrenic because of it, it's stupid, because these people are not qualified. And then their opinions, not the facts are in there, their opinions are what they hear and then just assume. And I'm like, well, then they're telling the doctor whatever they want. The doctor meets with me for 5 minutes first thing in the morning, and, you know, he's not listening to me.
So how much do you get a month in disability?
Less than $800 a month, but not much.
Okay.
I think it's like 780 something. I don't know.
Does it go into a bank account or on a card? Like
It goes on a card, and we've been trying to get a bank account, but in order to get the bank account, we have...
Alright, I just took a shower. So anyway, at this point in the video, we've gone through quite a lot. And I believe we got to the part where I was talking about Chris Kurth. People keep saying, you know, Sean, you just need to write it down, you just need to write it down. Well, there's a whole bunch of papers right over here that show that I've been writing it down. Oh, and there's a piece of pizza too. See? Paperwork. Alright, this video is getting pretty long, so I'm going to end it and download it, and we'll start another one.